inviting me to talk about this topic. So my area of research is cyber psychology. So I research the connections between humans and the internet and social media and how people use the internet, but also the impact that it has on psychology. So the impact it has on our emotions and our behavior. It's a very interesting area of research. I can certainly say that. It's certainly become a lot more complex than I initially thought it might be when I started out. But for now, what I'd like to take you through today is, and I mean, I could talk about this for hours, but we're just going to go through today really what we've seen in social media and trends since the COVID-19 pandemic. So, since social isolation, or perhaps more accurate, social distancing, became regulated and became much more recommended, and that increase in social media. But I do like to put the positive well-being spin on it, that from social media we might be physically distant, but we can still remain socially connected. However, as Lynn also highlighted, there are some challenges that do come out of our increase of social media. And to start, one of those main challenges we have seen is coinciding with our increase of social media use. There has been an increase in incidents and reports of incidents of cyber abuse. In particular, Julie Inman Grant quoted, and she is the e-safety commissioner, that the number of people reporting behaviour of cyber abuse, such as cyberbullying, image-based abuse, and even sex-based extortion, had more than tripled since coronavirus restrictions took effect. In fact, I believe the statistics over the Easter weekend in April was a 380% increase of reports, which is just an absolutely staggering amount. So it's quite clear from this that there has been an increase in cyber abuse, but the question really is why? I mean, particularly during this kind of time, why would these behaviors increase during a pandemic where we also, one of the messages is we're in this together? So what leads people to behave so badly online, and what are the catches? Although there are benefits of social media, and for example, what we're doing right now, it has the ability to bring people together, to connect, to share ideas, maintain relationships, but there's also some significant drawbacks. So some possible discuss, and I should also note that these have not been explicitly tested yet, but this is coming from my research, some possible explanations as why we would see that increase in cyber abuse during times like this. And firstly, a point I'd like to draw on is the interaction and relationship between our mood and our social media use. So research has shown that our mood does have a direct impact on how we use social media. And in particular, this came from a rather original experimental study which primed people to be in a frustrated mood and then exposed them to images of cyberbullying and trolling and monitored the level that they engaged in this behavior themselves. And the researchers found that the control group, so those who were not frustrated, when exposed to antisocial behavior online, were far less likely to engage in it compared to those who were stressed and frustrated. So why results like that would directly tap into how we're feeling right now? Well, for the most part, I would assume that everyone is feeling levels of frustration and stress. There is a great sense of unknown from what is going to happen, and really what we're being asked to do right now is be tolerant with ambiguity. And that tolerance of ambiguity is very challenging for some people. We as humans like to fill in the gaps and know what is going on. So right now, in addition to that ambiguity, we have significant challenges and frustrations people have faced, whether it has been redundancy, reduction in employment hours, income losses, additional child responsibilities. So right now, the level of frustration and stress overall is likely to have increased. So with that, we would see a direct correspondence with increase in that social, antisocial behavior online. So that's one reason why we might be behaving more badly. The other reason, it taps into a criminology theory called the broken windows theory. And this originally was a theory generated to explain increased crime in neighborhoods. So neighborhoods that have more broken windows, we would see higher rates of crime. The premise underneath this is that when we see, say, an environment that with crime or damage, we're more likely to then engage in that behavior. And this could be extrapolated to online behavior because the more we see antisocial behavior online, the more we might be likely to start engaging in that behavior. So we've got two dominant theories here that could explain this increase. Firstly, the relation between mood and social media. So the more frustrated, stressed mood leading to more antisocial behavior. And secondly, the more we see that antisocial environment, it increases the likelihood of our own antisocial behavior. So how this could then work is a cycle. We're stressed and we're frustrated, so we're acting out in more antisocial ways that we might not normally do. And this operates as a cycle because the more antisocial environments that we create, the more likely we are then going to act in antisocial ways ourselves. So it operates a bit as a vicious cycle between them. We're acting antisocially because we're stressed, but we're creating more antisocial environments which might increase that behavior occurring. So that is, I guess, a reflection on why we would be seeing this increase in cyber abuse right now. However, and the other side of that is definitely the bad of what we would see in social media happening right now. And we know that there have been these increases. There's the reports. But there's also some significant benefits of social media during this time. Now, the real challenge we are facing, though, is social media wasn't designed to compensate for face-to-face interaction. It was designed to really, as a form of supplement interactions, whereas now we're using it to compensate for what we would usually be doing face-to-face. So because of that, we are almost challenged or taking on the responsibility to make an active effort to create positive environments and realizing that this is new territory. We haven't used social media in this way before to compensate for face-to-face. So we have to be more active users. And by active users, that taps into the idea of self-monitoring, how we are using social media, increasing our awareness. And one way that we must continue to take care of ourselves is empathy online. Empathy has a physiological basis. Our brains are wired to experience empathy during face-to-face interactions. We have neurons that mirror the experience of others so we can share that experience. So we take away that face-to-face interaction and suddenly our empathy is a bit challenged, and particularly if you would think about how many people you might see before this working from home. I mean, it's extraordinary to reflect that I might see hundreds of faces a day compared to now I'm lucky if I would see 5. So there's a real difference in our face-to-face communication. And since empathy is facilitated by face-to-face communication, we need to make a concerted effort to ensure that we're maintaining our empathy, we're taking care of our empathy. And one way we can do that is video chatting. And we're far more likely to just pick up the phone and give someone a quick call and not video chat. But if you think that before you may have popped into an office to ask someone a question, or you just sit down and have a cup of coffee, just call and video chat a colleague or a friend and sit and have a coffee together. That's that active, or being an active user, that we must try new activities now. FaceTime or video call someone when you may have just done an audio call before. So this is really the take-home message that I have, is our active using online to foster that well-being. that it's a challenge, it's a new territory for all of us. We haven't had to compensate for face-to-face interaction before to this degree, so we have to be active users, monitor our mood and how we're feeling. If we're not feeling great, don't use social media. Go for a walk, connect with nature, play with your dog, do things to enhance your mood, knowing that that negative mood you might not then behave online the way that you would like to, the way that you would actually be proud of, or fostering well-being and community online. So the final take-home message I have is 3 things that you can do right now to enhance your social media experience. And if you've already done these 3, amazing, good for you. But if you haven't, these are some active ideas that you can get engaged online in a positive way. Firstly, if you don't already, follow the Kindness Pandemic. This is a group that's been created to share acts of kindness during the COVID-19 pandemic, and at last check, they had 500,000 followers of this group. And I mean, it's so uplifting to see what happens there. It can only uplift your mood, or I find it is really positive for myself. Check out local community social media groups for upcoming events. That's things like formal Fridays with people dressing up and having formal dinners. Concerts are being broadcasted online. A particular highlight I've had during this time has been watching a production from Shakespeare's Globe, an opportunity I probably never would have been able to experience otherwise. And couch choirs. If you haven't been involved already, they will be advertised in community groups. Essentially, it's people singing songs together and then it's mashed together as a big choir. And finally, if you're not aware, Facebook does have a new I care reaction. So using the I care reaction to show others that you care during this time. Okay, so thank you very much. I think now, as Lynn said, I'll have some question time.
Great, thank you. They're really fantastic points, Evita, and ones that we can all take away. I will let people know that we are recording these, and our valued member Denise White from the Compassionate Ballarat group is putting these online, and so they are on our web page. I can see a question there from Mary. So what information do you have on the gender breakdown in cyber abuse? Are there gender differences being seen in how men and women are using social media? And what lessons do they have for each other?
Hmm. As far as the cyber abuse during this particular COVID-19 time, the data has not been generated yet on gender differences. I'm actually hoping to start collecting some data. I do have a study or a project that has just been approved by ethics, which is great. It will be advertised on FedUni soon. But in general terms, men do appear to be more antisocial online than women. It does seem to, and that is in general, I will note, but particularly acts of provocative comments, deception, bullying, men do seem to behave more badly online. Why that is, and there's, again, we could talk about this for quite some time. Women do appear to use social media for more social connective purposes. Men use social media more so to be entertained. So the motivation of why men and women are using this platform in the first place is different. So if women are using it to connect with others and to foster interaction or social interactions, it does make sense that their primary method might not be to antagonize others and be antisocial. Whereas men using social media primarily for entertainment, which is why we actually do see men as more passive social media users, more likely to just passively and just scroll through social media, not necessarily stop and engage. So because of that entertainment motivation, they could be acting more antisocial to create entertainment for themselves.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, and Merle is also reiterating that, saying, you know, it's noticeable that women kept families in touch with each other rather than men. So it's that social, that sort of connection motivation rather than, as you say, being entertained. Um, and Denise is also saying that women do women far outnumber men in using social media?
Not necessarily. Look, I've collected a lot of data on demographics and this social media behavior. And when it comes to use, I generally don't see much of a gender difference. Also surprising, when it comes, or it might be surprise many of us now, when it comes to age, I generally don't see any difference in age in antisocial behavior either. So it's not just young men who are engaging in this behavior. Anyone can actually, which was very challenging, and it challenged my original conceptions of who these people were. I've learnt that really anyone's capable.
Oh, yeah, great. Yeah, I think that's the nature of the human response to stress as well. So, Kara is saying, not a question or comment. My favourite Facebook group for surviving COVID-19 is called View from My Window. Every individual posts just one photo from the view of their window, and I'm currently looking at a snapshot of a flock of rainbow lorikeets on someone's patio, so that's nice. And then Jess is saying many users engage with social medias to increase mood and reduce loneliness. How do you suggest users break this habitual response so they are less likely to engage in antisocial behaviour?
It's a really good question, Jess. It's an excellent question because we know that decreased mood and loneliness in the first place is what might actually lead them to engage in more antisocial behavior. So it's an excellent question because people do use it to increase mood. We actually go to social media to get a bit of a lift. So I think that it's a bigger question overall because cyber abuse isn't just only isolated in this COVID-19 pandemic. It occurs all the time. I think during this point in time right now, seeing our levels of self-monitoring as we're going through this, we need to be doing that pretty constantly, checking in on our mood, and I guess not relying on social media to be the way that or to look for entertainment to increase our mood, because that might not be the best way to do it right now, particularly if cyber abuse is increasing. So I think during this point in time, self-monitoring, seeing how you're feeling, and not relying on social media if you are stressed or frustrated to increase that mood. Now, certainly being perhaps also selective about groups that you are following. It could even be a matter of muting groups that you find perhaps are a bit more contentious or things that frustrate you. If it is even following environmental groups that frustrate because you can see awful things, that self-monitoring is also being strategic. What you expose yourself to on social media right now could be really important. The best option might be to flood your feed, flood your news with views from a window or cats and dogs during isolation working from home. Be strategic about what you're viewing online.
And yes, yeah. I wondered too if you could speak to the damage of those social media comparisons, particularly for our teenagers when they're, going through the years where they're developing a sense of self.
Yeah. I think something that's very important right now also to remember, particularly with adolescents and moving online, is that increase and that possibility right now for cyberbullying is pretty exponential because they are engaging online. So we would expect that we see an increase in cyberbullying across all ages, but particularly in adolescents, which we also know that has pretty significant links with developing depression, anxiety, but also impacts on identity and identity formation. The impacts of experiencing, and which I should also note, there really is no difference between the psychological impacts of experiencing cyberbullying or face-to-face bullying. In fact, some research has even shown that experiencing cyberbullying could be more damaging for adolescents and have even more increases in impacted self-esteem. So I think right now we need to be very vigilant of those warning signs that someone could be experiencing that might indicate that they are experiencing bullying online, because adolescents might not necessarily also be great at disconnecting themselves. They're actually quite likely to be very passive and just subsume it instead of actively going, no, I'm going to block that person. They just like they don't really react sometimes. So we need to be vigilant also in seeing those warning signs in others that they might be experiencing that right now. I'm not sure I really spoke to your question, Lynn. I feel I got a bit carried away on something I'm passionate about.
Yeah, yeah. What about your students? Are you noticing differences in the students? They're having to do all their work online now. Is that what are you noticing there?
Look, I emailed every one of my students individually after after we went online to check in. And for the most part, they didn't find, some did report like online learning's difficult. It's difficult to stay motivated. Um, what I can know is what they did say, they love it when I do record myself talking, so that even still having that face to face. They said that makes them feel connected. They also said they feel accountable because it's like I'm watching them, so that's interesting. But for the most part, their challenges are at home. It's not really necessarily the learning. It's combining learning now with having child rearing
Yeah.
responsibilities. Um, but they're okay. I have to say that for the most part, they seem to be managing. But I've also made it very clear to them that I will keep checking in with them, but they've got to keep checking in with me too. They need to tell me how they're
Okay,
going.
great. Good. Yeah, well, I can see that you've inspired at least one of the um, uh, participants to ensure that she uh, just watches how she responds online and to be resolved to be more positive in her online interactions. So that's great. Yeah. So, and perhaps just one last question. Do you think that social media fatigue will increase as a result of our constant online presence? I study disconnective practices, and emotional and social overload are reasons to disconnect.
Hmm.
From
I actually just I think that actually what I am hearing more from people right now is a social media detox. In fact, people are even using this opportunity to disconnect fully. Now, that's not necessarily possible for most, but even being strategic, like social media detoxing on some sites, I think that one thing that's quite fascinating about this pandemic is it has almost forced people to stop and take stock of things that they value. And for many, that has even been stopping and forcing them to suddenly even really monitor their behavior, how they are interacting with others, and even an increase in reflection on whether they value that. And for many people, the answer is starting to become no. And they would prefer, they're using this as an opportunity to detox from that online connection.
Yeah, yeah, okay, yes. I think you're right. It's really this time is so unusual. We are being, if we can take, you know, the blessings from it, if you like, if we can take what's positive from it, and use this time to really say what are the things that we choose to respond to and choose to engage with when we come back into the world, and certainly social media would fit in that domain, because as with everything, it's not the item itself, it's the way in which we engage in it that makes it, good or bad, as Shakespeare said. Yes. So uh, and but yeah, so thank you so much. Thank you so much, Evita. That's been a really fascinating discussion, and we can yeah, really take a lot away from your session. Um,
Yeah, perfect. If anyone would like to discuss further or even receive that research paper that I talked about mood and behavior, please do email me and get in touch. I'm always happy
Great.
to share
Yes, and you
science.
can see that that Evita's emails there on the screen at the moment. So yes, I'm sure you will get a few follow-ups as well. Good. Thank you, Evita. And as with all these webinars, we're finishing by providing some mindful resources. As this time of isolation drags on, I think we really do need to acknowledge it is impacting our lives, and that ongoing stress requires proactive responses in order to develop the skills that you've been talking about, Evita, of self-regulation and empathy. And more compassionate and empathic approaches require a better understanding of our mental processes and physiology, because our thoughts and emotions have physical impacts on our bodies, not just the ones we know about, high blood pressure and high heart rates. But really, I think an important one in this context is the fact that stress shuts down the thinking part of the brain, and we respond automatically and reactively to what's happening around us. And so therefore, to support our ability to choose how we respond more calmly, one mindfulness practice you can try in the mornings is to take a moment and just reflect on the day ahead and think about the qualities that will serve you in the activities that you've got facing you in the day ahead. And then name those qualities. So, and usually I choose 4. And for example, those qualities might be: I need to be calm, grounded, creative, and connected. And then the mindfulness practice involves 4 rounds of breathing. And so I breathe in, and then feeling the sense of calmness as you breathe through your body. Breathe in, and then the groundedness, and then the creative, and then the connected. So I wondered if we could just do 1 round of that breathing, so that you can just practice what it feels like, because it's important to feel those qualities, not just to name them in your head. So again, if we just relax and make sure our backs are straight and shoulders are dropped, and just taking that moment, making sure the breath's right down in the belly, and breathing that deep breath in, and on the in-breath, really feeling that calmness go right throughout the body. And then take another breath in, and on the out-breath, really pushing that breath right through down to your feet to feel grounded during the day. And breathing in, and that sense of creativity that supports us in thinking about the new ways we need to be dealing with the world. And then the last breath, and then feeling connected. So you might feel that the breath's actually going away out from you at a sideways direction, connecting to others around you. So yeah, so that's one breath exercise you can do that supports you in that process of having that choice rather than reaction in this stressful times. And and for next week, I'm really pleased to say that Superintendent Jenny Wilson from Victoria Police, and Jenny's also from the Compassionate Ballarat group. She'll join us to talk about our social safety in this time, so the broader social safety, which is a very important topic. Thank you again, Evita, and thanks everyone for joining us now. Thank you.